Do I write that?
You got to write it somewhere. I don't know where. You got to know his name. Chris Chin. There you go. Okay.
In our current world, we are in an ongoing search to find new, cleaner sources of energy. One of these new sources is biofuels. A biofuel is a fuel that is derived from like a vegetable or a plant such as corn. My claim is that biofuels are not a beneficial source of energy. First of all, biofuels can harm the environment. Because these crops are not used for human consumption, there's excess fertilizer that is used for these crops. And this fertilizer runs into the ground and creates dead zones, which are zones of land or water that are contaminated. Don Comus of SciOrg.com said that pesticides increase the degradability of corn stover. Now you might be wondering, what is corn stover? Corn stover is the stalk or the leaves or the corn itself, which is used for biofuels. 60% of the corn stover is actually used to fertilize the ground, because if you keep on planting in the ground, the soil becomes infertile. And only 40% of the corn stover can be used for green biofuels, so that's not very efficient. Secondly, they are not as efficient as fossil fuels. 30% more energy is needed to create these biofuels than they actually put out, according to Alistair Endersby from Cambridge Union. And Scott Hess from How It Works said that even though there's a decrease in the particles that contaminate the air, there's an increase in the nitrogen oxides, which contribute to smog. Also, biofuels break down rubber, which adds to the cost of maintaining your engine. And there's also a decrease in gas mileage. There's a 10% decrease in power, and 1.1 gallons of biofuel does the same amount of work as 1 gallon of fuel. Next, biofuels will raise the price of food because land for creating the crops that are used to manufacture the biofuel cannot be used to grow other foods such as sugar or corn. And from 2005 to 2007, there was twice as much biofuel being used, according to the IATP, which is the Institute of Agriculture and Trade Policy. And in 2006, the price of corn per bushel went up $4. And in Mexico, the tortilla, which is their staple food, went up by 14% in 2006. Lastly, biofuels are harmful to the economy. Our fuel needs are too great, and the amount of biofuel that we're using or that we're creating isn't enough to create a significant impact. In fact, last year we only used, our biofuel was only 0.003% of the actual fuel being used. And it'll raise the price of basic foods such as corn and sugar. And we don't have the means to produce a significant amount of biofuel either. And fluctuating oil prices are a bad thing for farmers, because the lower oil prices are, the less we need biofuels. And that'll put them out of business. And also, since the price of corn and sugar are going up, the people that can't afford them are basically screwed. And the government heavily subsidizes the growing of crops for biofuels. And in fact, last year the government taxed taxpayers $5.5 to $5.7 billion. And biofuel cars are typically more expensive than regular cars. So since the government is pushing car makers to make flex fuel or like biofuel cars, they will pass down that cost on us, which will raise the prices of cars. So in conclusion, I think that biofuels are not a beneficial source of energy because they're harmful to the environment, They're not as efficient as fossil fuels. They raise the price of food, and they're harmful to the economy. Thank you.
All right, Chris, you provide some good background information. The ideas explained a little bit. The problem with the proposition is it has that negative phrasing in it that I asked you guys to try and avoid. So in the future, be paying attention to that. There's no layout of what the supporting points are going to be at the beginning of the speech, so you're not providing us with a roadmap. However, at the end of the speech, you have a nice review that shows us where we've been, which is good for somebody who has been listening only partially, and then they may be able to focus in. But those at the beginning of the speech who need to be focused as they're going through the information, they should have gotten that as well. The background information explains a little bit about the controversy. I thought you did an excellent job signposting the secondary points, so those people who were listening could figure out where we were at any given point. The information is a little inconsistent. I thought you had a couple of good quotes on point number 2, for instance, but not on everything on point number 2. There was some other information that came up that needed better development. A lot of places there are presuppositions and assertions instead of evidence that's being presented. The cost comparison on the third point is not nearly as strong as it ought to be, and on the fourth point, when you get to the comparison of the food prices and you're mentioning some of these other things, we don't have any totals, we don't have any experts who figured out how big the impact's going to be. We just know that, well, it's potentially going to affect the price of certain products, but we don't know how big an impact it's going to be. The stuff that says we can never produce enough, that's the thing that I need some data on, and I don't really get that data. So I think that that's a little bit problematic. Like I said, at the end of the speech, I thought you had a very nice summary that helped remind us what it was that you were trying to say. And you do a pretty good job talking to the audience for the most part. You just need to make sure that you're not using assertions and assumptions in all of your argument, but you're also backing up those claims with some additional data. All right, thank you.